Hello, all. I'm Mr. McGill. I thought I'd make a short video to discuss the key parts of the class. First, if you haven't checked out the Canvas class as of yet, please do so as soon as you can. We officially started on Monday. I've tried to make the Canvas class content simple and minimal. So let me get right to the point here. I want to go over the most important things about class that you need to know and the things that you'll want to probably do in order. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is to become familiar with the Canvas class setup. Now I have my view here in actual student view on my screen. Notice it says reset student or leave student view. I have it in student view, so this is the way you see it. One of the things that a lot of students don't realize is that up here at the top of Canvas, you can change your view to show by date. Okay, so this gives you the chronological order of, in this case, in my case, of assignments. Also, um, 95 or more percent of the time, you're just going to want to stay in the home screen here. You'll also probably use syllabus because I would like for you to read the syllabus here. Um, you want you'll want to go to announcements occasionally if you don't check your announcements or your email regularly on your phone. Say you can find announcements here, but for the most part, like 95 or more percent of the time, you'll just all you need to do is stay on the home page here. So personally, I like the show by date, or excuse me, show by type view because this divides the homework assignments into the two types. So on that note, let me talk about that. So I want to jump down to the second type here under where it says assignments. It says create your BVT lab account. A few of you have already done that. I see on the BVT site that you've already set up your account. If you have not yet, I'd urge you to do so as soon as possible. This is only a 6-week course, so um, the sooner you get started, the better you are. There isn't a whole lot of work to do. There's some reading, and we'll go over the assignments, but still, because it is a 6-week course, I would urge you to get started as soon as you can. And how do you do that? Well, you can register for the class on BVT. You're already in the class, obviously. You're already in the Delta class, but you're also going to want to register to be in the class on BVT, which is separate from Delta College. So the way you do that is I would suggest go to the college bookstore, tell them the class that you're in, uh, English 33A with Mr. McGill, and then ask them if you can purchase the code. They'll give you a code that you purchase, and from there, then you can go back home or wherever it is that you go online with whatever device you're using. Go to this site right here, create your BVT lab account. If I open up that assignment, which is your very first assignment, there is a link here, right here, and you enter your join code right here, which is J9C66C, and then that gets you in the class on the website, on the BVT website. The reason you want to be on the website is because there are resources accessible to students who join. Um, One of the things that you have access to is here. Notice I've scratched the names out here. One of the things you have access to, well, I have access to how engaged you are in the class. So, um, overall engagement, how much reading you've done, comprehension, which is this is a reflection of how many questions you answered on the comprehension part, the practice questions. um, but the access the resources accessible to the students include um, flashcards, um, practice questions, slideshows, things like that, that you can use as a resource as you're reading through each of the chapters. Also, the reason I need you all on this is because this shows me how well you did. Notice I've clicked on grades here, and it shows me how well you do on each of the chapter quizzes. So there's a chapter quiz per chapter at the end of each chapter when you're ready to do that quiz. And they're not difficult, really. They're just very direct questions that come directly from the text itself. So they're not hard. Plus, you get 2 chances to take the quiz. So if you don't do so well, or you're not happy with how well you did, take the quiz again, and you're pretty much guaranteed to do better, because as you take the quiz the first time, when you get something wrong, it explains to you, um, what the right answer is and why. Okay. So now let's go back to the Canvas class here. I want to go back to home. So again, the first thing you need to do is to create your BVT Lab account. That's a 10-point assignment. The only thing you have to do after you've created the account and once you're in the class on BVT, just in the box that I provide on this assignment, just go ahead and type I, created an account, or I'm in the class now, anything like that. And you get the 10 points. So that's your first assignment. There's no other assignment like that. All the other assignments pretty much all look the same to one another. Let me go. So this is the first thing I would like you to do. Then up here is access to the chapter lectures. When you click on the chapter lectures, it's going to take you to a page that looks like this. And at the top of the page, or near the top, is a link that takes you to the YouTube lecture that I've done. And several of you, quite a few of you actually, have already watched the first 2 or 3 lectures. So that's good. So anyway, yeah, it takes you to the lecture. One of the things that I think not...
Control stress
negatively
affects physical.
Let me shut that off. One of the things that some of you, probably most of you, do know about, but some may not, so I want to highlight this, is you can control the playback speed on these videos. If you're personally, I like to speed the video up a little bit, because generally it's a little bit too slow. I'm like, okay, let's get on with this, right? I understand. Let's get on with this. So if you are that way, you can do that. You can just click on playback speed, and you can do the speed. You could set the speed at normal, slower, or faster. Just try them out and see what works best for you. Okay. So once you've watched the lecture, which is required, and I just trust that you'll do it. There's nothing that I'm not, I don't have any way of determining who. I know how many people watched it, but I don't want to really know who it was. I just trust, this is college level, so people are doing. I'm just assuming people are watching. So these lectures are required, but in addition, I'm making available to you a 5 point extra credit, 5 points of extra credit. Now, how do you get those 5 points? Well, after you watch the video, using this text box down here, write about what you liked about the video and or what you disliked or think would be helpful. So I've already gotten a couple of responses on this, and they were both really great. They said, I liked that, all the main points were covered, or something to that effect, and a couple other things. And then on the other side, where what you disliked or you thought would be helpful, for example, one person wrote, I think that it would be helpful if you included more illustrations with your lecture. So that's perfect. Anything like, am I not covering enough? Do I cover too much? Do you not like the tone that I'm using? More pictures, fewer pictures, less movement, more movement. I consider this constructive. So anything that you feel could improve these lectures, that way I can, make changes accordingly. Okay. So going back home now, that is the chapter, lecture, and extra credit opportunity. And these will just be listed under lecture/extra credit. So this is where you go to watch the lecture and then get the extra credit. This is, of course, where you go first to get into the lab account, create a lab account. And then the last thing, oh, by the way, on the lab, when you're in the lab and you've finished the chapter and you've listened to the lectures and all that, and you're ready to take that quiz, you'll do that within the lab, and then your scores will be loaded in the lab, graded in the lab, and I'll be able to see those. Okay. And that's a part of your grade. So make sure that you do that. Let's talk about the third opportunity for points and that apply to your grade. Okay, so let me leave student view. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is write a personalized summary of the chapter. So we're only covering 6 chapters this semester because it's a 6-week class, so we'll be covering a chapter per week. Because there is a lot that goes on within the first week, and I have a lot of people try to add the class because there are students who are struggling with getting into BVT occasionally. Things like that. It takes a few days usually to get started, and I understand that. So because of that, the first chapter requirement deadline is not doesn't take place for 2 weeks. So you've got a 2-week window of time to complete chapter 1 requirements. Now, keep in mind, however, because I can't get behind, I need to get through 6 chapters. Keep in mind, however, that at the end of the second week, you've got 2 weeks to cover chapter 1, but you also need to cover chapter 2 in that. So at the end of 2 weeks, you need to make sure that chapters 1 and 2 assignments are done. After that, every week you have a week to take care of those assignments. And again, as you get into this, you're going to find out this is not a big deal. It's really not difficult. So this assignment and this third type of assignment, the first being the extra credit opportunities you have, and the second being that signing up or registering on BVT. Okay, the third is this, which is after you've listened to the lecture, after you've read the chapter, and when you're completely done with the chapter information, I would like for you to write a 2 to 3 sentence description of the chapter. So this is a personalized summary, okay, of the chapter. Write a 2 to 3 sentence description of the chapter, at least 2 concepts within the chapter that you found particularly applicable and the reasons for them being applicable to you. Okay, so they apply to you in your life, or somehow these 2 concepts within this whole chapter really hit home. Write about that. And make sure that when you're writing, you use the terminology found within the chapter. Let me give you an example here. This example is taken from a chapter that is not covered in the course. I think it's chapter 7. So let's just read this first paragraph here, and then I'll talk about the next 2 and show you and discuss how this satisfies this requirement. Now, before I start reading, I'll tell you this is 3 paragraphs, but that doesn't mean that you have to give me 3 paragraphs. Some of you may be able to do it in 1 short paragraph. As long as you're satisfying these simple concepts and requirements here, then the length of the piece is not really important. So in this first paragraph, I write, in this chapter, the author discusses the importance of communication, period. So what did I do in that sentence? Well, I am giving the topic of the entire chapter. So it's like the whole chapter in a nutshell in 1 sentence. Okay. In this chapter, the author discusses the importance of communication. Now, if this were for chapter 1, I would say, in this chapter, the author discusses the importance of stress management. Okay. He begins by giving a clear descriptive model of communication. Then he dives into the topics of speaking and writing, focusing on composition and delivery. In addition, the topic of meetings and the workplace etiquette are briefly covered. I found the topics of listening and written communications particularly intriguing. Now, I like to write. I'm not expecting everybody to write perfectly and to have perfect grammar and grammatical structure and set up and punctuation perfect and all that. Not at all. This is not an English 1A class. I love to teach English 1A. It's a great class, but that's not what this is. So don't be concerned with the perfection of your writing, or I'm not a good writer. Just write what you think, and don't worry about all the rest of it. So you're thinking to yourself, like, how could I sum up this whole chapter in 1 or 2 sentences, or maybe 3 sentences? Okay, once I do that, what 2 concepts within this chapter did I find the most applicable to me? In other words, what 2 things really hit home? And when I'm writing about these 2 things, I want to make sure that I'm using the terminology found in the chapter itself. And by the way, make sure that it's required that you make these terms, the terminology, bold. Now, in your textbook, whether you're using an actual textbook, which probably very few, if any, are using, but because the textbook is the same online as it is as a hard, as a paper copy, when you're reading through the text, you'll notice that, and you probably can't see it here, but some of the words are bold, right? Like this one, stress management, or stress reaction, excuse me. So the terms that are most important in the chapter are bold. Okay, so that's what I want you to do when you're writing this. Make sure that you embolden or make these bold, those terms that are in the textbook that are bold. So for this chapter, I made bold the terms active listening and feedback. So again, I want a 2 to 3 sentence description of the chapter. I have 4 here, but you can easily do it in 2 or 3. That's worth 5 points. And then at the end of this, I say that I'm satisfying the requirement of number 2 here, at least 2 concepts within the chapter that I found particularly applicable. So I write about this in this first paragraph. Okay. So I found the topics of listening and written communications particularly intriguing, or I could have said, I found the topics of listening and written communications particularly applicable. Now, what did I do in the next 2 paragraphs? I wrote about listening and I wrote about written communications. Okay, so that satisfies this part that says, and the reasons for the applicability. All right. So 2 to 3 sentences describing the chapter, 2 concepts within the chapter I found particularly applicable, and how they were particularly applicable. Okay, and I can't stress enough, don't look at either the quality or the length of what I have here as what you have to do. Just make sure that you're satisfying these requirements right here. Because I set this up because I know that if students are going to gain benefits from this class, and particularly the chapters that we go over for the class, this is a real good requirement to have. It really helps students to get a lot out of it. Okay. I'm going to go back to the home page here and just do another recap. Number 1, I'd like you to create your BVT lab account. Number 2, make sure that you're watching all the lectures and that you take advantage of the 5 points per lecture extra credit that is available to you. And number 3, make sure you do the personalized chapter summaries for each chapter. So that means you'll do 6 of these. You'll probably do around 15 of these if you want all that extra credit. It's a lot of extra credit. And the reason there will be 15 of these is because there's probably on average 2 to 3 lectures per chapter. Okay. And I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, be sure to email me. Looking forward to seeing your guys' work, and I will be sending out announcements on a regular basis. Okay. I think that's all I've got. All right.